5 years ago, I made a video talking about my top 10 favorite games of all time, and it was a lot of fun and showed how much of a dumbass I am. But now it's officially outdated, so it's time to make an update to it and talk about my bad opinions even more.
You know the drill. These are all my opinions, blah blah blah. I don't care if you love or hate a game, this list is solely about my preferences, so there will be a lot of RPGs.
Don't shoot me!
To stop myself from naming too many games from the same franchises, I am limiting myself to 3 games from a series, so I can only have 3 Zelda games, for example. I set this because otherwise 75% of this list would just be Zelda and Final Fantasy. Before we get into this list, I do want to list a few honorable mentions. The 2 best Zelda games not included here are Twilight Princess and Wind Waker. I love these games to death, and they both deserve to have their HD remasters ported to the new Switch whenever that comes out. Ocarina of Time was also the very first Zelda game I ever played, so it has a near and dear place in my heart. It's also the worst 3D Zelda game. Majora's Mask is the better one on the Nintendo 64. Mario Sunshine is such a fun and unique entry in the Mario franchise, and Paper Mario 64 was my introduction to the Mario RPGs and still holds up to this day. Super Paper Mario probably would be in the top 15 if it wasn't a 2D platformer and was a real turn-based RPG with badges like the first 2 games, because its story is just so good. I probably should mention Super Mario Odyssey as it's the objective best 3D Mario game, as well as Mario Galaxy 2 as it's the sequel to the actual best 3D Mario game. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 was an amazing end to the trilogy and made me forget how much I despise parts of Xenoblade 2. I'm also going to throw in Xenoblade Chronicles X, especially because it finally got ported to the Switch after years and years of asking for it. Thank you, Nintendo, you're finally not cowards. Final Fantasy VIII is a stupid fucking game in a lot of places, but I also like it. That's all I have to say. Crisis Core introduced us to how awesome Zack is, which is enough to make this game worthwhile. Honestly, you could probably just throw every single Final Fantasy in here after Final Fantasy VI. Every single one of them I love. I have nothing against the first 5, I mean they're all fine aside from one of the games. You know which one you are. Shadow of the Colossus is a phenomenal game. The only thing I could just ask more of it would be to be a bit of a longer game instead of being able to be beaten in one sitting. Mario Strikers Charge is the best Mario sports game by a country mile, and I'm still depressed that Battle League ruined my life. Super Sluggers also deserves a mention. We need a new Mario baseball game. Luigi's Mansion and Luigi's Mansion 3 are such good games. I cannot believe that these don't get nearly as much credit as they deserve. Luigi's Mansion 2 also exists. The original Ratchet & Clank on the PS2 as well as the remaster and then Rift Apart on the PS5 are such good games. Bloodborne drives me insane, but is a challenging blast that I got crazy into after Elden Ring. Halo 3 was the first Xbox game I ever owned when my brother and I got a 360 when I was in middle school. I'll never forget the time we spent playing through the campaign together, and the multiplayer is so much better than any other first-person shooter I've personally played. Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver is the remake of my first ever Pokemon game, and seeing the Johto region in better graphics and color was such a dream for me. I love so much about this game, but I also hate a lot of things about it too, so that's Pokemon for you. Pokemon Black and White, both 1 and 2, are the best games in the series and the best story for sure. The content and quality of these games is on a whole nother level from the rest of the franchise, and they better not f*** up the remakes like they did with Diamond and Pearl. Legends Arceus also deserves a mention for being the most unique main series game, and I cannot wait for Legends ZA to come out. If that improves some of the issues I have with Arceus, it could definitely be on my top 15. Sonic Riders and Zero Gravity are my favorite racing games, which probably says enough about me. Shadow the Hedgehog is also my favorite Sonic game, which probably says even more about me. Okami is another fantastic game, and I'm so happy I played the Wii version to be able to play and paint with the Wii remote instead of the PS4 version. I can't imagine trying to play a game based so much around motion controls with a controller. Who would ever want to do that? Oh. Banjo-Kazooie is one of the best sequels ever made and better than Kazooie in many ways, but I have more of an emotional attachment to the first. Metroid Dread is the best 2D Metroid game up there with Fusion, which also deserves a shout out. The exploration is so much fun, and also getting the shit scared out of me every once in a while is kinda fun too. Yoshi's Island is my favorite 2D Mario game, and even if you don't want to consider it a 2D Mario game, I personally do, and it was at the top of my list in my most recent video. Pikmin 4 is the best of the series by far. It is such a good game. Every single one of you that has never played a Pikmin game, you have got to try that one out right now. Smash Bros. Melee and Brawl definitely deserve shoutouts as well, because they were the 2 Smash games from my childhood. And to end it all, the Ori games are 2 of the best 2D platformers I've ever played, and I still cannot believe these were made by Microsoft and not Nintendo.
I'm sure I missed 1 or 2 games that I've said I love before on this channel, but those were the main ones that came to mind when I was trying to think of what my most honorable mention should be. But with those all out of the way, now it's time to talk about my top 15 games of all time. time. To start this list, we're going to start with a game that really recharged my YouTube channel and is the only multiplayer game on this list, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Yeah, this is the only game that I don't have physically here as it's downloaded onto my Switch, so yeah.
I have loved the Smash Bros. Game since I was a kid doing the 99 stock matches with my brother on Melee and spending 12 hours straight playing Subspace Emissary together in Brawl. It will always be my favorite multiplayer game of all time, and even though Brawl has by far the best single player mode and a lot of the better side modes, Ultimate is exactly what the name says. It is the ultimate Smash Bros. Game with every character and stage from every game plus new characters and stages added. The game was already insane with the base game, but with the added DLC, this game became maybe the greatest gaming crossover to ever exist. The fact that you can have Sephiroth fight Banjo-Kazooie is enough to make me defend this game for life. World of Light is pretty fun, but is kinda bland looking back on it compared to what we got in Subspace. But considering the amount of content you get to choose from for fighting either online or with friends is enough to make up for the lack of cutscenes and a real overarching story in World of Light. Except they ruined the level creator, you bastards!
I love getting lost in a giant world with no indicators on where to go and just running around in circles for 3 hours before running outside, screaming, coming back inside, and looking up where to go on the internet. That was Metroid Prime for me back in 2003.
I had never played the NES or Super Nintendo Metroids when this game came out and only knew of Samus from Smash Bros. I went over to my friend's house one day, who, fun fact, has made appearances on this channel over a decade ago, and I saw him and his brother playing this and was in awe that Samus had her own game. I immediately knew I needed to get this and asked my mom, who said, "No, Evan, you don't need to be shooting things," and I said, "I saw Lord of the Rings in theaters at 6 years old, I think I'll be fine." I had to play this at his house for a couple of months before I was able to get it for myself, and it was so much fun to come back and play every other weekend or so and play together to try to find my way through this labyrinth. The movement and abilities in this game are so good and control so well, much better than many other games around the time. And the way you have all of your abilities at the beginning of the game just to be stripped of them and have to fight to get them back was such a genius idea and makes you actually worry when you lose them.
No, not my morph ball!
This isn't a game for everyone, as you aren't told where to go and pretty much never in the entire game, but for someone like me who likes running off and exploring, this was the perfect game for me as a kid. There's not really any side quests, but the entire game kind of feels like a side quest, backtracking and trying to find where to go, if that makes any sense. I hope that makes sense, because just saying that out loud confused me. This isn't even a part of the script, I'm starting to worry about my sanity.
When a game console launches, you need a really good game to go with the system, and thank goodness that the Switch had one of those. I'd rather die than play this again.
Of course, I'm talking about Breath of the Wild, which everyone knows was the only reason to own a Switch at launch. This was one of the most mind-blowing experiences ever at release, and running out onto the cliff from the Shrine of Resurrection to the shot behind Link showing the vast Hyrule you're going to explore is something that I'll never forget. Sure, I think the shot in Tears of the Kingdom is cooler, but the Breath of the Wild shot was more important and impactful because it came first. The controls and gameplay of this game is peak Zelda, where everything is super intuitive and well thought out. Except for the damn running and jumping. Why the f is the jump button put to X, and why wasn't that fixed in Tears of the Kingdom? Going into this vast world and having essentially everything at your fingertips was the perfect change for the Zelda franchise. There was so much to do it could be overwhelming compared to the linearity of the 3D Zelda games before it, but that's why it became arguably the best Zelda game ever. I say arguably because I have two others higher on this list. This game changed the gaming landscape forever, as we've seen so many attempts at open world games after this to try and meet its success. We got a frickin' Sonic open world game with Sonic Frontiers, and like, that is an open world, but nothing is quite matched up to the open world of this game since, except for its sequel and also the next game on this list.
I love making myself suffer, so it should be no surprise that Elden Ring ended up on this list, but don't expect to see Sonic Forces anywhere, let's not get too crazy here.
This game was my second From Software game, as I had only played Dark Souls 3 prior, which I just got bundled in with some other games for free, and it was fun, but Elden Ring took me from kinda liking the genre to sinking hundreds of hours into a game like the flip of a switch. The open world style of the game is incredible, as literally once you walk out into Limgrave, you can go basically anywhere you want. Or you could stay and try and kill this tree sentinel for 5 hours if you're a real man. The world seems a little dark and gloomy because, well, obviously, but it's so beautiful and the lighting really helps set the tone of the game and how serious it is. The story is kinda interesting, but let's not kid ourselves, nobody played this game for the story, even me who loves game stories. This is all about the gameplay, fighting bosses, and exploring all the different areas of the game. There are so many items and secrets to find that so many people would miss because the world is just so big, nobody will go to every single corner of the map in their first playthrough. The game was already massive, but then they added DLC this year, and it nearly doubled the game and made me fall in love with it all over over again. The difficulty can be a turnoff for a lot of people because it is harder than a bitch, but learning the controls and how to fight enemies is such a fun time and makes you appreciate how far you came, especially when you go back and kill that fucking tree sentinel in like 10 seconds. Once you get the hang of how the game works, it's so much fun and you realize it's really just a rhythm game. Can't wait for the next entry, Rhythm Elden Fever.
I always thought space and astronomy were super cool, so imagine if there were Italians in space. Oh my God.
This was one of the first brand new games I bought myself, as I was 10 years old when this came out in 2007, so I think that's part of why it's so memorable to me. I also spent about 48 hours straight playing it after it came out, so that just goes to show my bad time management and no life started young. Galaxy was unlike any game I'd played before it, and the different galaxies have such a wide variety of experiences that no game had before it either. They literally had endless possibilities from grassy to beach to lava and even made out of cookies. Who the f cared what they made? It was fun. And the use of motion controls was extremely well integrated. I don't care what anyone says. I enjoy motion controls as long as it's important for the gameplay and not just used for a stupid reason. Using the pointer to collect star bits and spin the control stick to spin Mario was extremely intuitive and significantly better than the remaster on 3D All-Stars using the Pro Controller. That was maybe the worst controls they could have made for this game. Just use the Joy-Cons instead, since this game was made to use the Wii Remote and wasn't as easily transitioned to a controller as other Wii games that got remastered on the Switch. The music of this game has stuck with me for years, and everybody can agree Gusty Garden is one of the best songs in any Mario game. But even though that's the most famous, there are so many other songs that make this game stand out from its predecessors and successors. This is also one of the few games that makes Bowser seem like an actual threat, and I love learning about Rosalina and her backstory. Wow, who would have guessed the RPG fan would prefer the 3D Mario game with the best story? I'm glad this game got a remaster with 3D All-Stars, but I would love for a Mario Galaxy 3 since there are so many options. Although we all know it's way more likely to be a Mario Odyssey 2. Come on, Nintendo, just listen to me for once. You're my only hope here. Oh my God, Sony, I love you.
Of all the video game franchises I've played over the years, the one that I've put the most hours into is by far Pokemon, but the problem with most of those games is they don't really make me feel any emotion other than hating Silver or making fun of Cyrus's hairline to make myself feel better. So my favorite of all the Pokemon games is not a main series game and is one of the spin-offs that you actually get to play as a Pokemon in. That would be Mystery Dungeon Explorers of Time, Darkness, or Sky. You can really consider any of them. This is just the one that I own and played first. The other two I played on emulators. They're all basically the same.
Mystery Dungeon is one of the few Pokemon games that actually has an intriguing story and isn't just evil team wants to take over the world and a 10-year-old who started their journey last week needs to stop them. The story revolves around you as a human being turned into a Pokemon and you befriend another Pokemon and begin taking missions and helping others with their problems. It's a cute little story and seems perfect for Pokemon, until it takes a turn and becomes about saving the world from evil Pokemon trying to disrupt the flow of time and end everything as we know it.
Well, that escalated quickly.
The dungeon aspect of exploring and taking on missions that are side quests is probably pretty obvious as to why I love this game, as I constantly talk about how I love games that give me more to do than just the main story. Being able to recruit new Pokemon to your rescue team is a unique spin on the capturing Pokemon from main games. Although, let's be honest, 95% of players just use your main character and your partner for the entire game. The music for this game is also incredible, but that's going to be the case for every game on this list. Especially the final boss music, and then the music that plays in the ending scene called Don't Forget. That's a song that makes me tear up every time I hear it. It was one of the first gaming experiences I ever had that made me cry as a kid. I can't say much more since it's a big spoiler for the story, but that's not really the point of this video. Maybe I'll make a whole video on this someday and explain every part of why this game is amazing, and also why Wigglytuff is the biggest piece of shit to ever exist.
My first video game console ever was a Nintendo 64, so I'm sure my first game ever on the system holds a near and dear place in my heart. No, I don't care about this piece of shit. I care about the actual best 3D platformer on the system, Banjo-Kazooie.
People rave about how influential and important Mario 64 was for 3D gaming and platformers and collectathons, and they are 100% right, don't get me wrong. But Banjo-Kazooie is better in almost every single way and was by far my favorite game on the Nintendo 64. My brother and I would play this together constantly, and the levels and funny dialogue was something that me as a toddler and little kid could love. Except Grunty, she scared the shit out of me for a couple years. The way this game makes you explore the world and find so many secret jiggies and interact with new characters is something that's sorely missing from many other platformers of the the time. The music of this game is something that stuck with me for over 20 years since I first played it. I will just be walking anywhere and randomly I'll just start hearing Treasure Trove Cove's theme in my head and I have to stop everything I'm doing and dance for 1 second. And the transformations from Mumbo are better than any power-up in a Mario game and are hilarious to see you turn into a pumpkin. The only issue I really have is that the controls can feel a little slow or sloppy, but they still control pretty well, and that doesn't take away from the amazing game despite being a little bit slow. The game was way ahead of its time and is a game I would love to see a remake of on modern systems. Although I'd prefer a brand new game called Banjo 3E as Grunty foretold back in Banjo-Tooie, but I'm not so sure how likely that is these days. Just give me an HD remake before I die and I'll die happy.
When I was a kid, I had a weird obsession with High School Musical for a couple of years, so what if they made that into an actual game? And they gave the students weapons to kill each other. Then you get Fire Emblem Three Houses.
This was the game that made me realize maybe that franchise that Sakurai has a boner for giving character spots in Smash Bros. Really isn't that bad. This game is still the game I have the most hours for on my Switch, with all the different playthroughs I did going through all 4 paths, making sure I got max relationships with everyone and beating the DLC, and then doing everything on maddening difficulty as well. And if you didn't get the idea from Elden Ring on this list, I love hurting myself. Something that I feel like really helps this game and many games coming on this list with why I love the characters and story so much is voice acting. I never really realized how important voice acting can be for the longest time because I just played Nintendo games from the 2000s and early 2010s, so nothing really had voice acting. Really, the earliest games I played with voice acting were the Modern Warfare and Halo games, but even then that's not what these games are known for. They're known for just killing people and hearing the most egregious racial slur you've ever heard from a 12-year-old with the worst mic you've ever heard. The character relationships in this game are really what makes it stand out to me. Forming a bond with your students and teaching them until the game shifts into a war is such good storytelling. It is a bit weird to end up marrying one of your students, but there's another game later on this list where a 28-year-old kisses a 17-year-old, so it could be worse. No matter who you choose for your class in this game, you are bound to have a phenomenal experience. Unless you picked Rhea, then you're a terrible person. I only did it to 100% the game. I will always be Team Edelgard and also Claude since he is just kinda there for the ride and easily the best character in the game. Sorry Dimitri, at least you're better than the crazy religious bitch and you look cool, but you're a distant third in terms of teams for me. I'm just glad this got me into the franchise and I can't wait to play the new games. I take it all back.
What's the best Mario game in your opinion? Maybe it's Odyssey or Galaxy or 3D World. Those are all pretty good choices, but in my personal opinion, the best Mario game is the one where he beats his cock.
Who would have ever guessed the RPG fan's favorite Mario game would be an RPG? Everybody. This game was one of my favorite childhood games and easily the best of the Paper Mario series. There's a reason the world exploded when the remake was revealed, and I wish I recorded my reaction, but I was working and I have to afford to live in this apartment, so blame capitalism for not being able to see it. The characters have so much charm that I can't believe they took away in the future Paper Marios. The writing is still decent with funny dialogue, but giving regular enemies unique designs make them stand out and feel like a real party instead of just Mario and some dumbass companion who won't shut the hell up. Yes, I'm looking at you, Kirsty. Having a different villain than Bowser is something I love in Mario RPGs and it helps keep them feel more original and unique than the main games. I'm perfectly fine with always keeping Bowser the main villain for the 2D and 3D games since it would kinda feel weird without him, but the Paper Marios and Mario and Luigi games always should have some random villain and relegate Bowser to a comedy relief character. It fits him so well and shows off his stupid and goofy side where he still finds Mario as his enemy but hates the new villain even more for taking his shine. And you even get to play a 2D Bowser game between chapters in Thousand Year Door. How could they take this away from us? The HD remake was phenomenal and actually improved on some of my main issues with the original, specifically the backtracking, which was a major issue in multiple chapters. They added pipes in good locations to speed up a lot of it, which was very much appreciated. Now I don't have to chase after damn General White for 2 hours just for him to be sleeping in his house. Fuck this guy.
Do you want to meet a hypocrite and a liar? Oh boy, do I! You're looking at him.
I know I said this was my favorite game ever when I put my review out right after this game came out, so how could it now be number 6? It's a pretty easy answer. I played it again. There are obviously still loads of things I love about this game, as it's number 6 on this list, but playing through it again, I was able to see some of the issues or things that could have been better that was blinded by shiny new video game bias. For one, the fact that they repeat the same story 4 times at each of the temples and the sages each say the exact same things word for word is pretty lazy writing when they easily could have just done a different dialogue or part of the story depending on which order you beat them in. I know it's more work, but come on, this is a sequel to the biggest Zelda game ever that's literally 3 3 times as big and came out 6 years after. You're telling me you couldn't squeeze in an extra 12 sections of 2-minute dialogue for the temples? And also now playing through Breath of the Wild again, it really feels like they just tried to copy the storytelling of that game with the memories or flashbacks, but it worked way better in Breath of the Wild because Link literally had slept for 100 years and lost his memories. And yes, I know this technically is Zelda losing her memories and sort of sleeping for 1,000 years and her telling the story of what happened that we miss, so it fits pretty perfectly. But damn it, Breath of the Wild needs to say they have something better, so let it have this. The exploration of this world and the countless side quests and things to do makes the experience so good, especially on a first playthrough. I spent over 30 minutes talking about why I love this game, so if you want to hear all that, go just check out the video. All I ask is that you ignore the end where I say it's my favorite game ever and throw Skyward Sword in the trash.
I'm so sorry I ever disrespected you like that. Do you have time to cry today? Let me take a look real quick. Yeah, I think I could squeeze it in. Then you gotta try out Final Fantasy X.
This game has some of the highest highs of any game on this list and also maybe the lowest low. That being how fucking stupid Blitzball can be. I spent more time than is healthy, winning every game and tournament I could, and just why the hell could you not control your characters on defense, and why do like 3 defenders teleport to you when you're trying to shoot or pass? There will be 1 defender behind you and then 2 more show out of nowhere? Why are you not fighting Sin since you can fucking teleport? If they were to ever remake this game, that's the one thing I want them to change. Everything else can stay the exact same, except also go back to the original graphics and not the HD remaster, since the characters' facial expressions are so much better on the PS2 version. Besides that though, the HD remaster is gorgeous and the world of Spirit is beautiful and only enhanced with the CG cutscenes. It's insane that this game came out in 2001 and the cutscenes still look on par with modern games, and I would argue better than a lot of them. This has the best turn-based battling system of any of the Final Fantasy games. It was a nice change of pace from the ATB system they used in the previous games. Most of the characters are incredible and give you a reason to care about them. And then there's Kamari. I again am going to make a video on this someday on why it's so great, so I'm not going to say too much. But I will say, why does no one talk about Seymour, who's damn near 30 kissing a 17-year-old Yuna? He's lucky his battle theme is amazing, otherwise I wouldn't have let this slide. This was one of those games that really made me cry at the end, and has one of the most fitting and beautiful pieces of music in not only Final Fantasy, but any game out there. This easily could be higher on this list, and to be honest, every game between this and number 1 could be swapped a little since I love them all. So don't hate me when you see that I have 2 other Final Fantasies ahead of this. Yep, 3 of my top 5 are Final Fantasy. Sue me. Actually, don't, then I may have to sell my Wii collection to afford a lawyer, and I might need all 5 someday.
You ever play a game while you're locked in your house because of a global pandemic and you get so in love with the game that you beat the entire thing in a week despite it being a 100-hour adventure? Yeah, that was me with Xenoblade Chronicles back in 2020, and your theories are correct. I don't have a life.
I played the original a long time ago, and I remembered that I liked it, but I'd forgotten how amazing the story of this game was until the definitive edition came out in 2020. Plus, the game needed a graphical upgrade more than maybe any game on the Wii. I'm usually not one to be negative, but I'd rather stare at my cat shit than the Wii graphics again.
At least this is in HD.
A theme you've probably seen from some of the other previous games on this list, and will continue to see in the next 3 games, is that the characters all have major developments and go through progression to change in a way that makes them more lovable than how they started. And the relationships between each other only enhance how much you care about them. I have noticed a lot of games I love have a good romance or love story in them, so what can I say? I'm a hopeless romantic and I love The Notebook.
Best movie ever!
The world of the Bionis is one of the most beautiful game worlds I've ever seen, and it's genuinely impressive how amazing the game looks on the Switch. People who try to say the Switch can't do impressive graphics because they're not in 4K like the PS5 or Xbox clearly have only played like 3 games. There are so many that do phenomenal stylized graphics, and personally it's more impressive to me to have these graphics on a lesser powerful console than the 4K graphics on a game that's essentially cutscenes with a couple of button presses throughout it. Not sorry, Sony fanboys. I love many PlayStation games, but some of the games don't nearly have enough gameplay for me. I'm getting sidetracked though. Just play Xenoblade and meet the love of my life. No, not Fiora. My boy Riki.
For the longest time, Skyward Sword was my favorite game of all time, and then I played Tears of the Kingdom, which passed it. But then I played Skyward Sword again and I realized I loved it way more than I originally even thought, which is crazy considering that I had already signed over my bank account to this game in my will.
Skyward Sword is everything I could ask for in a Zelda game. It has a beautiful art style with a world with so many vibrant colors that is just amazing to look at, with so many unique enemies, puzzles, and secret secrets to uncover. You can say the sky is bland all you want, but you could also go fuck yourself. Have you ever thought about that? Nah, you're allowed to not like every aspect of a game. I just personally don't find an issue with it, the same way I don't have an issue with sailing the sea in Wind Waker. The motion control gameplay is something I really like and helps make the game feel more unique over all the other Zelda games. But if you really do hate them, you could just play the HD remake with a Pro Controller. That's my favorite change they made in the remake, that they actually give you the option. Also, you don't have to see the same dialogue option 50,000 times picking up the same item just because you saved and closed the game between picking the item up again. That was stupid, but that's my only issue with the original game. I've talked countless times about why I love this game, so I'm not going to bore you repeating myself for the 100th time since 2018. Just know if anyone ever disrespects this game, you're allowed to send it to me in the DMs or comments and I will fight them on the spot. Don't try me.
I know it's probably crazy to a lot of you that Skyward Sword isn't still number 1 on my list, but after playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth earlier this year, I can confidently say that this is ahead of it on my all-times game list. Although, to be honest, this kind of does feel like a bullshit entry on this list because it's 3 games and eventually it's going to be 4 games, but this is my video and I don't want to take up 3 separate spots on my list just for Final Fantasy VII, so you're going to have to deal with it.
Final Fantasy VII's story is phenomenal, and the OG is one of the most influential and important games in history. The remake has done nothing but improve and expand upon every aspect of the OG and makes it even more perfect than it already was. The characters have so much more depth to them, and the backstories and twists that multiple characters go through give some of the greatest storytelling in any video game. If I were to rank the original, remake, and Rebirth, I would go original last, then remake, and then Rebirth number 1. That isn't to say the OG is bad or anything, it's an amazing game, but there are multiple parts that are dated or that the remakes have just done better. The world of Final Fantasy is stunning, from Midgard to Junon to Gungaga to Corel. Every area has so much detail and small little secrets. I'm glad they shifted from the more corridor or straight path design of Midgar in Remake to a more open design in Rebirth. It gives you so much to do, and all the side quests give this game so many hours of play. There are people who complain that there's too much to do in the game, and I just don't understand that. Why are you complaining about having even more content? You don't have to do it if you don't want, so it's not like the game is forcing you to put in 150 hours like the crazy folks like me. If Part 3 can be at the same level or potentially somehow even better than Rebirth, then this has a very good shot at becoming number 1. It's already basically there since I flip-flop between this and number 1, but I feel like there is one game that resonates more with me personally than this game.
I have been going back and forth over if Final Fantasy VII or this next game should be number 1 on my list, and I think I've finally come to the conclusion that Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is the best game I've ever played, but this next game is the one that resonates the most with me and is my favorite. And of course, that would be Final Fantasy IX.
There has never been a game that's had characters resonate more with me than this game. The themes and conflicts that arise from characters' motivations, pasts, feelings, and the difficulties facing the unknown is some of the most well-done writing and character development in any form of media I've ever seen. I don't want to get too into detail because I am for sure going to make a full long video on why I adore this game so much and why it means so much to me. But I'll just hit the main points here. Vivi's coming to terms with what it means to be alive and die is something that I've worried about too in my life, as, to be honest, my biggest fear is death and the unknown that comes after it. And seeing him not understand what being alive means to understanding how to give your life meaning really helped me see myself and my life in a new light. And Zidane's motto of "you don't need a reason to help someone" is something I fully agree with, as we should be always willing to help those in need and don't always need to get something in return for it. We should be nice because it's the right thing to do. And also when he faces questions of himself, and the scene that plays near the end of the game with maybe the best song in the whole Final Fantasy series, it's a perfect scene, and if they ever remake this game, I cannot wait to see it. The overall themes of the game just relate to me more than most other games out there, and the characters and chemistry they have makes me love this game even more. This is a game I would die to see a remake of, although to be honest, I don't think it needs a remake. It's perfect the way it is, and I would much rather see a remake of Final Fantasy VIII to fix some of the stupid bullshit that game has.
Final Fantasy IX is my favorite game of all time, and really that shouldn't be a surprise to you when you look at my left arm. I literally have a tattoo of Vivi right here. I really am so happy I've gotten into playing more of the Final Fantasy games after Remake and Rebirth came out, and I've gotten into so many wonderful journeys that I will forever be grateful for. And also Final Fantasy II.